Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Better Opinion. I am Kevin. This is my co-host, Mansor. Mansor, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing fine.
You don't look like you're doing fine.
I'm doing fine.
You're doing fine?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. What would you like to talk about today?
Well, let's talk about the election.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
election.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's talking about it, and I just wish they'd stop. But I'll talk with you about it. That's okay. So what about there's a lot to talk about with the election. And I know anyone viewing this, it might be a couple weeks out. You know, we're a little backed up on recordings. But what about the election do you want to discuss? There's a lot we could discuss about it.
I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens because of it. One thing I'm not looking forward to is the Republican Party staying what it is now.
It is disappointing to see the Republican Party become a sort of, the Republicans I've always not liked them more than I don't like the Democrats. But what they've become is a ghost of what it used to be. It's just sort of I don't even know what the right word is. Every word feels too buzzified, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to figure out what the right word is without it just sounding like a generic insult. But it's like they're just you can't even say that they're only interested in corporate interest anymore. Now you're just like, what are your objectives and why do you care? It's been infiltrated by
I don't think
nationalists and Christian fundamentalists.
I think it's they kind of understand it doesn't really matter what they say as long as
Donald Trump
proved it.
He literally said I could just shoot someone in Times Square and nobody would care.
Yeah, and he still got elected.
Yeah, well, he's right,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you think about it, he lost the debate. He ran from every other debate. His rhetoric was just worse. His VP looks like a moron, and he won, right? And it's because culturally we've become so... I'm not sure what the right word is, but when I talk to people and they talk about politics, everything is sort of an oversimplified buzzword. Groceries are more expensive, they say, as if groceries globally aren't more expensive. They don't understand what influence the president even has over these kinds of things. They don't see reality. They don't see, whether you like Biden or not, the administration has put us in one of the strongest economic positions we've been in the past 10 years. We're coming out of the pandemic. Everything was bad.
Yeah.
And things are better. Unemployment's on an all-time low. Inflation is going down. Just a lot of things to that effect. But people don't see it, right? Because right now, rather than the actual things that are happening, all people pay attention to is rhetoric. So someone says your groceries are expensive, and then you go, my groceries are expensive.
Yeah.
And that's Sleepy Biden's fault, Sleepy Joe.
Yeah, the problem is it's feel-based politics rather than evidence-based.
Yeah, everything's all vibes, right? Yeah. And you can see that by these people who, someone says, I just found out today that we're not getting our bonuses this year because the company is investing on buying stuff before these proposed tariffs happen. Or someone saying that they didn't know that the ACA and Obamacare were the same thing. They thought Obama equals bad and affordable equals good, so they wanted to get rid of Obamacare and keep the ACA. And then they're blown away when they find out that they're the same thing. And I think that's really what happened, because when I talk to people, it's clear they just have no clue what something is or what the effect of those things are. I saw someone I know who I actually respect a lot the other day talking about tariffs, and they were saying it's, if the price of a toaster is, $30, the price is only going to go up by $3. I'm like, that's not true. That's not true. And on top of that, tariffs. So here's the thing about tariffs. So the idea behind a tariff is that you tariff goods that are made outside of your country with the intent of trying to incentivize buying locally. The problem is the vast majority of our electronics are not made.
Yeah.
They're not even assembled in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
And if they are assembled in the U.S., the parts aren't made in the U.S. And that's true of a lot of things.
Yeah.
Very few things are 100% American made. And here's what will actually happen. Because tariffs, the way tariffs work is they are passed on to just like anything, it's all passed on to the consumer with markup, always with markup. So what'll happen is that things will go up by 20% because that is what if a 20% tariff, is 20%. They're going to pass that on to the customer. Their prices are going to go up. Now, if the majority of products go up by 20%, and they will, and anyone who says otherwise doesn't know how tariffs work, or economics, they have no clue. The people who are locally made products, they're going to go, all their prices went up by 20%. I can up my prices by 18%, and I'll still be cheaper. And they will. They will increase their prices because they can. Because that's the free market.
Yeah.
These people who claim to love the free market don't even know how it works. You know, you see it all the time. Every once in a while, you see someone who's ethics-based as a business. There are exceptions to this. You know, and they go, well, we're not going to increase those prices. I remember there's a guy on Shark Tank, and he kept, you know, they kept saying, why are you selling this so cheap? And he's like, because I'm selling it to farmers and they can't afford more.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's one guy. 90%, 99% of those same people on that show, they're going to just price it at whatever they can sell it at.
Yeah.
And that is what happens. So that is inevitably what's going to happen. And I know I'm right because I've made these predictions before, because I've owned an international product. I've been a product manager on multiple products. I've worked in supply chain. I know how this works, and you can tell people who don't. So, you know, I think based on what you were saying, it is just vibes, because it's clear people have no clue how these things actually work. I saw a guy just say, you know, someone was like, oh, prices are going to go up. And then someone replied to them, we don't import food. That's just not even true.
Right.
I think it's more than half. I think like 80. I don't actually know the percentage. I know it's a huge chunk of our food is imported from outside the U.S.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is interesting to see. I do think people are a little more panicked than they need to be. I think you're going to find it's going to be more of a Ronald Reagan situation, less of a Hitler situation.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if Donald Trump tries to do more than he did last time at the end of his term.
Oh, they always do. Second term is always when you do the stuff that you couldn't have got away with if you were running for re-election.
Yeah, the caging the children. Now we cage.
Well, now we cage everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. What do you think? I'm curious. What do you think the reason is that despite the fact that Kamala looked better in the debates, that JD Vance looked terrible, Trump looked terrible, why do you think it is that it seems to have been a total irrelevancy?
I think one of the problems was that I think what's his name? Bernie Sanders kind of outlined it best. The Democratic Party has kind of lost the faith of its followers, a lot of them. They don't really make much change, and Kamala is the vice president to someone who's who's probably going to do the same thing that Biden does in a lot of things, and not a lot of Democrats like that.
Yeah, I remember back with the election with Hillary. So there's a thing I've always explained to people. It's interesting that people don't talk about this very much, because I don't think I've ever explained it and have someone tell me that they think I'm wrong. What happened in that election is that you had a bunch of people running, and what you had was Bernie Sanders, who stood for a lot of things. You know, Bernie Sanders has had a long time. He's always been consistent, right? Like people have tried to call him a bad guy for things he did, 30 years ago. But he's even said, yeah, I mean, I've made mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not perfect, but he's consistent in what he believes is right. He says he's going to do something, and then he at least attempts to do it. Even if he can't succeed, he tries. And so he was very, very popular, and he represented us. One of the things I think is interesting about Bernie is that Bernie and Trump are kind of the same thing, but from a different perspective. They represent to the people who look at them a breakaway from the status quo, a true difference. And that's what people really want, because like you said, it's all vibe based.
Yeah.
They really, really want to feel like things are that's what Obama ran on, right? Change. Yeah. Whether it was true or not, that's what he ran on, because that's what people really want. They see their whole lifetime politics always working the same way, and they want sort of like a radical wrecking ball change.
Because there are issues, and we're not addressing them.
Exactly. We're not addressing them. And we can't address them because the whole system is designed to protect the people at the top.
Yeah.
So what you have is that Bernie Sanders was running, he's vastly popular, and then he's running against Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton is an establishment Democrat. So she was at the top of the totem pole in the party, and he was not because he's technically independent, just running as a Democrat. So he had about 30% of the votes. I always say that in the Democratic Party, it kind of was like this. 30% of people would only vote for Bernie. 30% wanted Hillary, and 30% don't care. They'll only vote Democrat, right? That 30%, they may not even vote Democrat. That 30% may be like you just have to win them over.
Yeah.
You know, it could go either way. So what happened is that the people who wanted Hillary actually would have been okay with any candidate, but they wanted Hillary. But the people who strictly wanted Bernie, that's strictly who they wanted. That 30%, they only wanted Bernie, right? There's more people who wanted Bernie. I would say that like more than half of the people actually preferred Bernie over Hillary, but all the people who preferred Hillary would have still voted Democrat. But like half of the Bernie voters were like, I don't want Hillary. I don't like her.
I do remember that.
Right. So what ended up happening is amongst those people who will not vote for Hillary, some of them didn't vote. Some of them voted third party. Some of them voted for Trump out of spite.
I do remember that. Yeah.
And then everyone said, well, I don't like that. You're wrong. And I'm like, wrong is irrelevant. It's what happened. What could you have done to prevent it? Well, if you had chosen Bernie as the candidate, you would have. But the party went out of its way to make sure Hillary won the primary and that Bernie lost. They did everything, including corruption, actual corruption, where they would cut off his microphone and not hers. They would just find ways of not giving him advertisement. You know, he just wouldn't like get shown in advertisements. You know, they would do everything to try to, and I mean, Jon Stewart did a whole episode on it, at how the party was just blacking him out, right? Yeah. So they put Hillary forward, which she wasn't popular, and they lost. And chances are Bernie wouldn't have lost, or at least it would have been much closer. Yeah. Right? And the reason Biden won, even though everyone wants to sit here and make statements about, you know, oh, it's a stolen election, oh, you know, that the evidence shows that it's just probably not true. Yeah. Otherwise they would have won this one. Go ahead.
I think it was just that, if I remember right, Bernie didn't run, and he tried to put support towards Biden.
Yeah, I mean, that might have helped, but I think just people were very unhappy after the pandemic.
That too.
And it's vibe-based. So there are a lot of voters who are not dedicated. But the loudest voices make you think that everyone is one side only. The reality is that there are a huge number of Americans that can be swayed in either direction.
I don't know. I'm just so surprised they were swayed towards Trump in some way.
If you look at rhetoric on the internet, people are just deep chugging the conspiracy juice. Everything is a conspiracy. Everything is a lie. We don't trust any media. Everyone gets all of their ideas from Joe Rogan and Lex Fridman. No, Lex Fridman doesn't have ideas, but what he does is he has people on and they have ideas, and he goes, wow, so you think we should exterminate this group of people? And how do you feel about video games? You know, his interview style is to just like not interview them. So everyone thinks that that's where you get alternative media, you know, or not alternative media, but you get your facts is from alternative media. And I don't know if you know this, but it has been revealed that most right-wing pundits have been getting paid off by the Kremlin.
You have told me this in a previous episode that I don't know is going to come out.
Yeah, well, like Lauren Chen, I believe it's Lauren Chen, was running this whole thing. To their credit, they were too stupid to know. So Dave Rubin, Tim Pool, and all of them, they were all getting paid off by the Kremlin. They didn't know because it was Lauren Chen who was running the whole thing. And she's on trial in Canada for being essentially a Russian spy.
I think it's funny that the Republican-based pundits are the ones who are getting
Russian money to
Yeah.
Well, you have to think about it. Dave Rubin's viewership is so incredibly low. Some of his videos have less views than me on my video game channel, which I have less than 1,000 subscribers, and some of his videos have less than me. How is he still in business? Oh, it's because he was getting $100,000 a video from the Kremlin, right? And then I believe Tucker Carlson and Jordan Peterson was recently revealed that they also were receiving Russian money.
Oh, I'm not surprised when Tucker Carlson went to basically suck Putin's dick.
Yeah, he did. Well, he did. I mean, we watched it live. I mean, it was basically pornography.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. And so, when you realize that, you start to go, okay, this is alternative media. I've always respected Joe Rogan as like a show host, his ability to be a show host. But his guests have caused him to, over the years, just go deep down this rabbit hole. And, people get all of their ideas from his show, and the people on there are just telling you something with no evidence. They're saying it's true. And I see it. I mean, I've had this argument with family where they're just like, they literally say to me, our groceries are more expensive. And I go, right now, American groceries are actually lower than the rest of the world. Everyone's more expensive. This problem isn't an administrative-based one. It could be solved through administration, but that's not who made it more expensive, right? The reality is that during COVID, everyone's prices went up. Again, we're talking about people don't know economics. Everyone's prices went up, and then because of supply chain. And then when the supply chain was fixed, the cost went down, but the company said, I like making $20 per loaf of bread. What if we all just leave it that way? And then they did, right? They lowered it a little bit to say, look, prices are down, but it's not back down to where it was because they know people will pay it. And that's not because Biden said, hey, pal, why don't you up those prices?
It's because,
supply and demand, it's free market. It's literally the free market everyone always is filleting. And then you say, well, regulation would fix it. And they go, regulation bad. And it's like, well, why is regulation bad? Regulation bad. I was told that. I was told regulation is bad.
Regulation on who? Regulation for what reason?
Well, Trump, during his last presidency, deregulated the pork industry. So now, do you know what's happened? He allowed them to regulate themselves. Do you know what happened?
Not great things.
Massive pork recalls because now it's poison because it's contaminated meat because they regulated themselves.
I don't eat pork.
Well, obviously, but like it's not really the point, right? The point is that whether you eat it or not, the point is that the pork was being regulated by the government. He deregulated it, and upon doing that, 4 years later, we have massive problems in the pork industry. And so, and that's what happens. You deregulate. Boeing was allowed to regulate itself by the FAA because the FAA was underfunded. And what happened?
They make death traps.
Yes. Their own factory workers say they wouldn't fly on a Boeing plane. So what I see is a lot of people who just don't have an understanding actually of economics making a bunch of, I saw people, this one will blow your mind. I saw people that I know that I think are intelligent asking the question the day that Trump won, okay, where are the death camps, guys?
What?
Where are they? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, he's not even in office yet. Is that a gotcha? He's not even in office yet. Do you think, is he a what are they called? Oh God, what's that race in StarCraft? The alien race? Not the Zerg.
I know.
Protoss. Thank you, Michael. Is he a Protoss? Is the second he's elected, does he start warping in the camps?
It's like he was building them just.
Internment camp has arrived. Like, you know what I mean? Like, does he just start teleporting them in?
We're still in a Biden administration where he doesn't just.
It's not just going to be there. Yeah, it was the worst gotcha I've ever seen. I was like, this is totally an emotional post disguised as an intelligent one.
I feel like there are a lot of people who are just like saying that it's not as bad as you will think.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
And you know what? They're probably right. Yeah. I don't think there'll be death camps you know?
I hope not. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be more like Ronald Reagan, right? We're going to have a stacked government, and he's just going to enact a bunch of policies that benefit the rich and don't benefit the poor. And we're going to have trickle down economics too, electric boogaloo. And it's going to be shitty long term. And then, 20, 30 years from now, it'll finally be fixed for a new Reagan to show up.
Yeah.
It's the Reagan cycle.
Have we even fixed all the stuff that Reagan has put into place?
No, because nobody wants to for some reason.
Yeah. Because we still have shitty healthcare. It's like, what, things are still deregulated. People don't like regulations still.
For some reason. Well, it's always propaganda, right?
Yeah.
So the rich and powerful who stand to benefit from the deregulation convince the poor and powerless that regulation is bad. But what it really is that what you've really got is that these are the things that'll benefit, unions, regulation. These things will benefit you and me. They'll benefit the working class. They'll benefit the middle class, and they won't benefit the extremely rich. And deregulation doesn't benefit you, it doesn't benefit me, it doesn't benefit the working class or the middle class, but it does benefit the extremely rich. And that's exactly what they've done. It's just like Obama equals bad, right? Yeah. It's the idea that if I just convince you that something is bad, you don't actually have to know why it's bad, how it's bad, or what the benefit is of getting rid of it. I don't need to tell you that. I just have to make a joke and call him Sleepy Joe. Just make the person's name wrong and then laugh.
It's the power of advertisement.
It's the power of just rhetoric and propaganda. Yeah. It's power of vibes, as you put it. So that's sort of my long-winded perspective on how it's going to go. I don't know if that really addressed your original thought or question.
It does, kind of. I'd be interested to see if we managed to get enough people mad at the Republican Party to create a new party to replace it.
The problem is that we've always had the ability to. The issue, so here's the problem. What we need ranked choice voting in America. Do you know what that is?
I know what that is. You can choose. Well,
go ahead.
From what I remember, ranked choice voting is that you can choose based on a preference from based on how many candidates you can do. Is I prefer this person as my number one choice, this person is my number two choice, this is my third choice, fourth choice, etc. Yeah.
You can just let's say there's 5 candidates, so you just rank them 1 through 5, right?
Yeah.
And if your number 1 choice doesn't win, your vote is moved to your number 2 choice.
Yeah.
And then if that person doesn't get enough votes and they would lose, then it's moved to your 3rd choice. So the way that works is you literally vote for all the candidates, but you vote for them in the order that you want them.
Yeah.
And that way it means that there's no such thing as wasting a vote.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to vote for the Green Party, which was foolish, because as an aside, if you're the candidate for your party for 20 years and you can't even increase the size of your party, you can't even win a seat in Congress, it's time to retire. And the fact that Jill Stein was on the Trump side of things, I was like, what is wrong with you? That's not even the Green Party. That's just I don't even know. But when your vote can't be wasted, it means, okay, I want to vote Green Party. I'm always going to put Green Party as number 1, and then I'm going to put Democratic Party as number 2. By doing that, it means that people can actually look at the third party as anything other than a joke, because their vote will never be wasted by saying they want that. So those extra parties, I think if we introduced ranked choice voting, it could be possible for third parties to just start taking seats the next election cycle.
That would be nice.
Well, it's true because people like those parties already but don't vote for them because they believe the vote is wasted. If the vote wasn't wasted, they would immediately put them as number 1, and then Democrats or Republican as number 2.
Yeah, it's a weird chicken and egg situation now, where if I vote for a Green Party, all of a sudden I was as you said, it's a throwaway, because you need enough people to believe I can vote for the Green Party to actually make it manifest destiny too.
Yeah, to kill all the buffalo. So it is one of those situations where the reality of the way our government runs right now is it will never break away from the two-party system until we have ranked choice voting. And once we have ranked choice voting, it would probably be night and day. And I think anyone who doesn't want ranked choice voting is just they're just a victim of propaganda, because it's literally only good for us. The reason it doesn't exist is because it's not good for the politicians.
Yeah. We have this weird electoral college thing. It was like we have a weird voting system that's so far behind what our technological advances are. I don't understand why we can't be much more instant, just have electronic ballots or something. I understand people have like an issue of like hacking and stuff like that, but that's still an issue now.
Paper ballots are just as easy, if not easier, to scam, because you just go manipulate them and there's no evidence. There's no way of knowing, right? I think, I mean, a lot of other countries their democratic system works very well, and different parties have gained power constantly have like strictly like 100% electronic voting.
There is a video about how there is some issue with how ranked choice voting works. I won't go into depth because I don't quite remember how it goes, but there's a chance for the last person you vote for to win in some cases. It's an interesting math-based problem.
It's probably better than what we're doing now, though.
I think it is much better than what we're doing now.
Because like this is one of the things that I always talk about is it's like, I've never seen anything in my life be perfect.
Yeah.
Right. And so every time we want to make a change, someone brings up problems. I remember this happened. I'll never forget the time I was with my buddy in his car, and he was a libertarian. He's like, I never vote. He wasn't even a libertarian. He's like, I am independent. I'm not part of any party. And I was trying to explain, you know, why I believed in Bernie Sanders and why I believed in the things he wanted to do. And he's like, those things would never work. And I said, besides the fact that that's like not a true statement, economically, like mathematically, like evidence-based, you're just wrong. Should we not always be trying to achieve a utopia? And people hate the word utopia. Every time I say utopia, they always like shit their pants and think of like a book they read where utopia is bad. You know, and I'm like, I'm sorry that you read a work of fiction where they took the word utopia and said, what if I made utopia hell? You know, instead of what the literal definition of the word is. If you were happy all the time, wouldn't you be unhappy? No, I'd be happy.
The problem with using utopia is that it's used in a lot of like books as like, oh, but deep underground there's something bad happening. Yeah,
people are tricked by the fact that they've read a book and turned it into propaganda in their head. They read a work of fiction. But I say, you know, even if we can't make things perfect tomorrow, shouldn't we always be striving to make them perfect?
Well, I think the problem is you always come up with issues with solutions, but never come up with other solutions.
Yeah, nobody ever wants a solution. They just want to point out the problems with the one solution that's been suggested, which that solution is still better than the current situation.
Which I think is like perfect. We can just move to that and then find different solutions for the problem that creates.
You're right, and that's what he said. He kept going, yeah, but that's not achievable. I said, how would you know if we never tried? How would you know if we've never tried to achieve it?
It was always impossible to cure the flu. It was like,
we can't fix anything. I've always said this. Today's magic is tomorrow's technology, and today's impossible is tomorrow's standard. There are so many things that we have technologically now that they said were impossible until they weren't.
We landed on the moon, if you choose to believe it or not. We have people in space.
It's my biggest issue with the arguments around Einstein's theory of relativity, right? Is I have always argued there has to be something about this statement that is not true. And the reason is because, or if it's not true, it's breakable, right? Like my problem is when I talk to people about like faster than light travel, if you watch a video on Kurzgesagt or something, they just say a bunch of stuff that is proven by the math, but hasn't been proven in a literal sense. I see you have a thought. Let me just finish my thought. Is a literal sense, and it tells people we can't achieve blank, so we shouldn't. And I always go, while I'm not disagreeing with Einstein, I am no quantum physicist. There has to be, we have time and time again had a mathematical impossibility become a mathematical possibility. You're telling me that for some reason he's the only person who's infallible?
Yeah. The problem is people don't understand what science is. Science is a study of something. And when it stops being a study of something, then we stop calling it a science. So the theory of relativity is just that, a theory. Mm-hmm. You don't call things in science facts.
Right.
It's like this is from everything we've collected as evidence, this is a theory that is the closest to true as possible.
Right.
I'll give one good example. Newton, whose like ideas about how gravity and things work was expanded upon by the theories of relativity. He wasn't necessarily wrong. It's just that his ideas he didn't have the technology, the years of help from different scientists to expand upon it. I'll give you a good example. Do you know how gravity works in a large sense?
What do you mean in a large sense?
So when people think of gravity, they think, oh, apple falls down from the sky. But what gravity really is an attraction between two bodies of matter and their density.
Yes. Okay.
The problem is that people can't really think outside of the mode that they live in.
Gravity equals down.
Yeah. People, I don't think, even realize what you see through your eyes is all an illusion. Mm-hmm. It's reflected light. It's just your representation of what you see.
Yeah, it's your perception of what is based on your eyes and brain's ability to interpret light into images. Tons of animals and insects see the world completely different from us.
Yeah. And it reminds me of a line I like from Sigma, who you do not like. The universe was not made to make sense to you.
Yeah. Sigma from video game. Not the Sigma grind set. It is true. And so it's, a lot of people, they kind of roll their eyes when I say something about what Einstein's saying has to be wrong or is missing something. But the reason I say that is because I find it to be unrealistic that throughout all of history and even in my lifetime, we have repeatedly had things that seemed like an impossibility become a possibility or even just something that does exist. And for some reason, there is this belief that all these things that we can't actually test, we can only be, there's all these things about Einstein's theory of relativity, right? And for a long time, they were all theorized, and then we were able to test, and they were right, and they were right, and they were right, and they were right. And so everyone's going, he's been right. So he must be just the most right.
Well, he has actually been wrong before.
Right.
There's in fact one I don't remember the exact scientific theory. It was something about randomness that he could not believe, and his response to it is that God is not random, even though he is an atheist.
Right.
Which I found interesting because it's like Einstein is not an infallible being. People can be as smart as Einstein, I believe. I don't know why so many people. I mean, don't get me wrong. He is a very impressive scientific figure, but it's not as if he did not have help from other people. There are other scientists too.
That's true. Yeah, no, it is true. And so what's my point with all this? Because we've gotten onto the subject of Einstein, right? My point is that, I think that I've told you that, and I might even mention in a past episode, I don't remember, that at DARPA, they accidentally made a warp bubble.
I do not think you've told me this.
Okay, so yeah, at DARPA, while running a different experiment, they accidentally created a very small warp bubble. Mm-hmm. It's just real. It is a warp bubble by definition, and therefore has shown that it can be done. Mm. The problem is the amount of energy it took to make a tiny one was so big that we do not have the means of creating the necessary energy, either through efficiency or through power production, to produce a warp bubble that is effective for use in any way. Mm-hmm. But we do know now that it's not a theory, you can do it. So I've told people this and they're just like, oh. And I'm like, but if you told them, if that hadn't been done yet, they'd be like, oh, that's just sci-fi. That could never be. And it's like, so it's like people are super, super willing to like dig their heels in and be really stringent and strong-minded.
Yeah.
If something hasn't been done yet.
Yeah.
But the second it's been done, they act like, oh, well, yeah, well, neat, I guess.
Yeah. I wonder how many people think the warp in Star Trek is just made up, because it's based on a real theory.
Right.
It's based on like a real hypothesis that existed.
That's interesting. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't remember the details, but I do remember that like the creator of Star Trek is not a dumb individual.
Right.
It's like
Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah, Gene Roddenberry. If you watch his episodes, it's a very specific commentary on how things work, and he's very forward thinking for his time. His series is like the first to have interracial like people kissing.
Oh yeah. Well, because he believed that the idea of a utopia was one where people were more interested in facing off against non-humans than fighting between humans. Crazy.
One that I wish we could eventually figure out
on our own. Yeah, I know, right? But my point is that we see, they've made this warp bubble. So we've seen that the sci-fi of yesterday that believing in was for crazy people is now the reality of today, right? So whenever someone says something can't happen on an economic level, on a social level, on a technological level, I go, that doesn't make any sense, because we have throughout human history made the impossible become possible with new discoveries.
Yeah, and we don't do that anymore. It always has to be this big thing to force people. It's like, I feel like NASA's decades behind where we should have been. Like, when did we land on the moon? And like,
well, it's because we stopped funding it. It's because we've continuously defunded NASA so that we can, I don't know, fund more of Raytheon's production of missiles. So that we can give our missiles to Ukraine to only sort of use them.
It's like it makes me so disappointed in like where we're going, because we should be much further than where we are, and we've just decided to not.
Well, we spend our money on tax breaks for the rich and tax increases for the poor, and
I think it's interesting too, because I feel like if the government were to focus more on making things nice for everyone would benefit, even the rich motherfuckers.
Well, it's the problem is a short-term greed, right?
Yeah.
So these super ultra rich families, they just want things to stay at they are because things are working. All right. And people are always thinking short term. I mean, if you realize, if you look at life, look at anybody, people are always thinking short term. I mean, even when we're talking about the election, if I were to just look at the past 10 years, 30, let me look at the past 20 years of my life, right?
Yeah.
If I were to sort of take an average of all of that, it'd be pretty easy to see what I actually care about and what I actually want. But people don't look that way. People's ideas of what's good and bad can change in a month, right? And thanks to social media, that's what's happened, is people are so quick to just like treat something as just super big deal. When we talk about like gender politics, I know we talked about this some in other episodes and I don't need to go deeper into it, but when we talk about gender politics, people care so much about it. And we're talking about a super minority, right?
Yeah. I don't think we have to micromanage these people, because
well, here's the thing. This is the part that it's not even whether we should or shouldn't. I don't care, because it's such a minor thing. Right? But we make it a huge thing on both sides.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be like both sides, but like literally you have these two very loud groups of people who it is like, this is it. This is the hill, right? We must both duke it out with knives on this hill till we're all dead. And it's a super duper minor part of our daily lives. Yeah. It's not worthy of this much energy investment, but they think it is, and they say rhetoric, like I don't even want to repeat some of the stuff I've had family say where, and I'm just like, I remember one time I just said, I don't care. I'm truly apathetic. This is just not important. They're like, but it's horrible. I said, horrible stuff happens all the time. Do you even pay attention to the rest of the world? You know, it's like when people talk about abortion, and then I'm like, how many orphans are there? What are you doing for them? Oh, I remember the Republicans voted to to remove health care for orphans. Right? Hundreds of thousands of orphans. We're going to get rid of them, but we are going to make more of them. You all must give birth. I know you don't want it, but we're going to defund our social...
They're going to put them in cages.
Well, yeah, they're going to put them in the cages. We're going to defund health care for orphans. We're going to defund social services, but we are going to fund forcing orphans to be alive. You know, and some people go, well, but then they get a chance to be alive. Yeah, but like...
How good of a life?
How good of a life? Which, you know... We can get all into like the morality of it and the morals of religion and what you believe the consequences of death are. But the point is that you can't tell me you give a shit about children when you don't do anything for the children that are alive.
Yeah.
You actually harm them. You know, imagine a man who says, I care so much about the well-being of trans children, but every day he walks outside and shoots a child. You know what I mean? Like, I don't believe you. I don't believe you actually care. You know, and I even think the people who think they care don't actually care. So what are you doing? What are you doing to make their lives better? Did you do anything? Did you even donate to a child hospital? No, you didn't do anything. And so, but that's the thing, right? People are so worked up about things that they have zero actual investment in. They just have emotional investment in it. It's all vibe based. It's all vibes. And that goes back to my original point that when we look at the direction that politics has gone in, people's entire opinions of what they care about and where things are going can be shifted in a year. It's all super short term. You know, we have people who are blaming the Democrats for the vaccines that Donald Trump originally got into production. Yeah. Operation Lightspeed was his, or Warp Speed, I don't remember. It was Operation give a lot of money to private companies so that they'll make this product. And then everyone, and then because the Democrat, and it used to be the Democrats are anti-vaccine and the Republicans are pro-vaccine. And I don't really know why, but one day those positions shifted. And then everyone was just like, oh, well, now the vaccine is bad. And the Democrats are trying to like send the immigrants to vaccinate our kids to turn them trans and then shoot the baby. Yeah. And then execute the baby.
In the womb. Yeah. In the womb.
In the womb. Yeah. Well, no, they take it out, they give birth to it, they take care of it, then they execute it with a gun. Yeah.
Reverse baptism.
Yeah. But yeah. So with that in mind, I don't know, you know, how we can expect to, you know, people say they want to turn to normality and they just like, well, then just do it. Well, I return to normality all the time. I just turn Twitter off.
Well, I don't know what people understand is normality because things are changing. So normal is just different now.
Yeah.
Normality is like a weird moving target. What are you, normality is like in the eyes of the beholder, as weird as it is, it's just what you assume things should be.
Yeah, it's just what you feel is okay and undisruptive. That's what your idea of normal is, and it is, as you said, a moving target.
Yeah, something that it's just you feeling comfortable.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, you know, what I think the reality of this situation is that it's going to be, you know, Donald Trump isn't going to start 1 million death camps. He's also not going to do nothing. If he does follow through with the tariffs, which I think it's entirely possible he won't, but if he does, everybody who says they're going to be nothing is wrong. Don't speak to me. You don't know economics. It's what a tariff really is just increased taxes on the poor, right? Yeah. Because like if you got rid of income tax, the middle class, they pay around 20 to 30%, so it'll be a little bit of an income reduction for them, but the poor pay either between none and like 15%. So a 20% increase on prices will just be an increase on their on their costs, right? They're just going to have less money.
Yeah.
And then the rich won't notice a difference because it's an increase on the rich. Well, actually, it's not. It's an increase, but it's a decrease because they're paying the same price as you and I, but they have more money. So they're going to pay 20% more on their cheap products, but they won't pay more on average because they're not paying any income tax. And even 10% on $1 billion is a lot more than what the cost of goods is going to be for them. So it's really just an increase in pricing on poor people. And it's not going to bring in more money for us. But at the end of the day, we're going to get through it. It's 4 years, and then I'm sure they're going to piss people off, and in the next election, everyone's going to go, well, now I like Scrim Dimblow because he says that he's going to execute the moon, and that's what I'm for.
Yeah.
And then someone's going to be like, well, the moon is actually the way our whole planet functions. Without it, we all die. And they go, moon. Joe Rogan said the moon is evil and filled with vaccines.
Yeah. The moon is filled with cheese, and I'm allergic to cheese.
Right. So
I'm lactose intolerant.
So we got to execute the moon. But I don't think it's a crisis, but I do think it is. I mean, I could talk endlessly. We've been talking for a while now. I mean, how long have we been going for? We've been going for a little under an hour. I mean, I could talk endlessly about what I think is the reason that the Democrats
I don't think it matters,
lost,
really.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of reasons. One of them just is a lot of people, I think it was 20% or 30% of Americans didn't know Joe Biden had dropped out.
Really?
Yes. It was Lucas told me the other day.
Really?
Yeah. I was actually surprised. I was like, really? 20? He's like, yeah, I was thinking it was 20 or 30%. Just said they just didn't know that Joe Biden had dropped out.
Okay.
So they went to the polling booth and just didn't even know who Tim Walz was or why they were voting for him, why Kamala was on the ticket.
Well, interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that happened wrong. It's the Democratic Party dropping, not paying enough attention to working class Americans. I do think that Kamala should have gone on Joe Rogan's podcast. I don't know why she didn't do it. I think that, because like I said, I mean, I think at the end of the day, Joe Rogan's opinions I don't agree with. I think he would have given her a fair and reasonable interview because he has a ton of, I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson goes on there all the time, and regardless of your opinion of him, he is extremely left-leaning, So I think it would have been a fair and reasonable interview, and I always think
free advertising.
Yeah, it would have been free advertising, and maybe she would have said stuff that would have convinced a lot of Joe Rogan watchers. Because the problem with alternative media right now is that nobody is engaging with the people who the opposing side listens to the most, right? Donald Trump would win points by just going on some left-leaning shows and having a conversation, and Kamala would have won a lot of points by going and talking to Joe Rogan or Lex Friedman or both, right? I may have my complaints about Lex, but here's the thing. I know he's not watching it. Our 5 viewers aren't going to see this, but I have a lot of criticisms of Joe Rogan or Lex Friedman as interviewers, as show hosts, as people who do the rhetoric that they have or the things they support. But I can say without a shadow of a doubt, it would be a fair and probably entertaining interview, especially Joe, right? Lex would give, like every interview, an inoffensive and lacking any sort of challenge interview, but it wouldn't be a mean one. It wouldn't be an unfair one. And Joe would give an excellent interview, I'm sure, right? But who goes on there? No one from the opposing side is ever willing to just go have a conversation with what is an actual reasonable person. Regardless of his beliefs, Joe Rogan is actually a reasonable guy. You can talk to him because he's had other people who disagree with him on and had good discussions.
They should have just sent Tim Walz. It would have been fun.
I think he would have had a great... Tim Walz, this is what blows my mind. Tim Walz is the perfect guy to go speak. They did it a little bit. Jubilee, I think? No, it was more Perfect Union. Had him talk to some rural Americans who ended up being convinced by him. They were like, after I talked to him, he made some really good points, and I do actually like what he's talking about.
I feel like he had a lot more charisma.
If he was running for president, I think it would have been different. I actually think he has more charisma than Kamala does. But I don't think Kamala's ever had much charisma. One of the problems I keep seeing is that they want to push, the Democratic Party wants to push like female candidates, but they choose the least charismatic women. There's a ton of really excellent women politicians.
I don't like Hillary Clinton. The problem with choosing it is like a first woman president. It has to be a really good one, because otherwise, if anything bad happens, it's like, oh, it was a woman. It's like, we're never going to do this again. That sort of stuff.
Yeah. The problem isn't that these people are women. It's that they're not particularly charismatic people, but they keep picking them. And then because they're women, that's what gets pointed at. Right? There's a ton of politicians who are women who are effective, charismatic, well-spoken, knowledgeable, and fairly moderate. But we just don't pick them because they're not party insiders, But Tim Walz was super charismatic, right? Yeah. And the reality is he's not rich. He's not. He's middle class. Yeah. He doesn't own any stocks. He makes the income of a politician, which is good. Those guys make hundreds of thousands of dollars, but that's just their pay for him being in Congress, right? That has very little to do with being a big businessman. He is just like a normal guy. And every time he went and spoke with someone, they liked him. So, I feel like if they had actually sent him to talk to these opposing side people, they would have been like, wow, I do actually, I like this guy, I like his ideas. Because they always say that no hate ever survives exposure. You can hate someone from a distance, but once you actually have to interact with them, it can be hard to hate them for reasons that are ambiguous. Yeah,
best example is the person we talked about last episode. I forget his name, who went to meet with the KKK members.
Oh yeah, was it Miles Davis?
I think so.
Daryl Davis. Not Miles Davis. That's a different person. Daryl Davis. Yes. You're right. Once you interact with someone and they turn out to be reasonable, it's hard to hate them, and ignore their ideas. So I think that is one of the many problems, but we've talked about so many, and I think it's really an amalgamation of all these different issues. And the truth is, I think that at this point, we just need other parties.
Yeah. I think another problem is that this would be solved by many parties, is that the Democrat Party, the Republican Party are kind of omnibuses of multiple different issues.
Well, I was just thinking that. I was thinking it's not even that the Republican Party is all on the same side. A lot of Republicans just don't like, Republican politicians didn't want Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, there were many who went to the Kamala
side. Yeah. Well, that's the one thing this is the one thing I will say. Even though the Republicans control all of the government now, I wonder if they'll actually be in control, because how many of those people are going to rebel against the party?
Yeah, because if I'm not wrong, it felt like some people even betrayed Trump.
Oh yeah, they did. Yeah.
It's like a weirdly cutthroat environment they've created in the Republican Party. So
there's no unity in the party. Well, that's not true. Up until now, there has been. There's been a lot of unity, which is why they've been able to do whatever they want. And it's been the Democratic Party that's actually been very, very broken. I think it's starting to happen to the Republicans too. And we'll see what that actually translates to in Trump's administration, if he doesn't go to prison in New York. But I will say this. No, I won't say it. Well, thanks to the Supreme Court granting the president absolute immunity, Biden has the chance to do the funniest thing ever. And we'll leave it at that without going into detail of what that is. But so do you feel like we've talked about this subject? I mean, I know I kind of gave like a 15-minute dissertation at the beginning. Do you feel that we've covered this topic well enough?
Yeah, I think we kind of went over what the thoughts were generally of what's going to happen, or what's happening, kind of.
How do you feel now that we've talked about it? You weren't happy at the beginning of the discussion. How do you feel now? Is it at least a little bit cathartic, if anything?
It's of course cathartic. I think after seeing Trump get elected. I need to become much more of a squeaky wheel to.
The best thing you can do, and I'll say this to you, and I'll say this to anyone watching, is get involved in local politics.
Yeah.
The reality is that we live in a union where the state has the power, contrary to what you believe, to give the federal government the middle finger, and get involved in local. Cities do it. Cities actually tell the state to go fuck itself. Atlanta did it. They told the state to go fuck itself. Right? That's why they're called sanctuary cities, because the city goes, we don't care. And then they go, well, we're going to stop you. And they go, good luck. Right? So, federal government can try to enforce the law, but what happens when local police arrest those agents because the local law says what the federal agents are doing is illegal, right? People say federal law trumps local law, but that's only if it's a federal case and then is taken there. But if a federal agent gets arrested for breaking a local law and gets tried locally, it doesn't matter if the federal government says that they were within their legal bounds, right? There's this checks and balances thing, right?
Yeah, funny how that works. Yeah.
So it will be interesting to see if the states start doing that. But I will say, because they already have to some degree, but I will say that if you really want to be involved, I mean, you or I could get elected to our city or state council right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm gonna participate more in local government and that sort of stuff. So
yeah, you can just run for election, and you'd be surprised how easy it is to win on a small scale. You just have to have good ideas and be well spoken and not be completely uninformed. Actually, that's not true. In today's rhetoric, just go in and say that you're going to make Sterling great again.
It was like gonna make it great again.
Gonna make it great again.
I'm not gonna say how. Or...
We're gonna deport Chewies back to Texas.
Yeah.
No more Tex-Mex in Sterling. Get rid of it. Yeah. Barbecue only.
I don't like that restaurant.
You don't like it? I think it's okay. It's pretty middle of the road.
Yeah. But it's like it feels like a waste to go there.
It's expensive for what you get. Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate the conversation. I know I definitely went off on some really long explanations, but I had a lot to say on this subject.
I felt like you would. That's kind of why I brought it up.
Yeah. I wasn't necessarily planning for it today, but I see why I should have probably expected it. Hopefully, if you've made it to the end, you enjoyed it. Hopefully, it's given you some ideas or thoughts. Any opinions, please put them down in the comments. Mansor reads it. So, that's good. I might. Who knows? It could be a wild day. Maybe I'll get drunk and do something I wouldn't normally do.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for watching, and hopefully when this is out, it's not irrelevant. And Mansor, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Catch you guys later.
Yeah.